I was in the deck force, 4th Division, and our job was to take care of the decking on a ship, things like that. But in port, we had different jobs, and had been assigned as a bow hook. That's on a 50-foot motor launch. That's the guy that ties you up when you get the boat up alongside another ship or a dock or whatever. And we had been called as a standby boat crew for a 6 o'clock run in the morning. And we were on our way back when the attack started. And it's funny, but I saw the first one come in and he was level. And I said to my coxswain, I said, "Hey, Bob, looks like the flyboys are out early." And that remark was based on the fact that the Army Air Corps used to make surprise attacks on Sunday so we could all practice. We'd run up in general quarters, the officers would clock us and find out whether we were good or bad. And so, but the second one, shortly behind him, was banked a bit. We could see the big red ball on the wings, fuselage. And I told him, "That's not ours. Let's get the H out of here." And we headed back for the ship. Looking at the memorial, we were slightly, maybe a couple of 100 yards back, running in, return to the ship. And so we would have been about halfway between the memorial and the marker that you see, the white mooring place over there. And we were about 20 yards off of port quarter when the second bomb went off. And the concussion was sufficient that it just picked that 50-foot motor launch right out of the water, turned us around, dropped us back in again. And we could see, of course, no sense going to the ship. And we started rescue work because there was oil from the ships that had been torpedoed and so forth. And they were on fire, so we were trying to get as many people to the boat as possible. Took them to Ford Island, and they sent us up to the head of Ford Island, which is beyond the Missouri over there. And because the hospital is on the mainland, across that channel, and we were carrying the wounded, injured, back and forth across that channel. And the Japanese strafed us 6 times. And that's where I picked up one of my wounds. And they finally sank our 50-foot motor launch.
Where did it sink?
Right off of Ford Island. We tied it up to a barge that was moored there. And the last I saw of it, it was hanging at about 65 degrees off the barge's side. And we wound up doing some special duty for a couple of days before I got back to the mainland in administration. And I had been listed as missing in action at that point, but I was back in time to take my name off that list. But my family never found out about me until the 31st of December. So it was a while. In fact, my Christmas presents mailed from here got back about the middle of December.
But it was a good New Year, or a good New Year's
yes,
way to start the new year then.
Yes, it was a good New Year's present for them. I got to talk to them in January when we finally got back to the thing. They put me on a destroyer and we went to sea.
What did you do after the Navy? How long were you in the service?
I was in and out because I got married 1 year and 1 week from the start of the war. In other words, December 13th, 1942. And my wife had just recently died, but we would have been married 64 years this month, December. But so I was in and out, but always on either active reserve or active regular. And I was called back for Korea. I was called back for, I went back in 55. And then I retired in 67 with a combination of reserve and active duty time, 26 and a half years.
So you've seen 3 wars, been an active participant in supporting that sort of thing. I mean, you were here for the start of World War II. Where were you when the war ended?
I was on the destroyer USS Taylor, and we escorted the Missouri into Tokyo Bay for the surrender.
So you were at the beginning and the end.
Yes.
That makes you kind of unique in a number of ways. As you are here at the visitor center and as you go aboard the memorial, what thoughts run through your mind?
Well, of course, the first question is why? Why am I alive and they're not? That's a question that's kind of hard to answer, but it's fairly obvious. I wasn't in the right spot to get killed, so I was lucky. But it must have been more than luck, because I was on 2 destroyers in World War II, and I did 23 major operations. I missed Midway, Saipan, and Iwo Jima. And I was at Okinawa and the end of the war in Tokyo Bay. And the rest of the time, I wandered all over the globe on destroyers. But I got out in '67.
And what did you ultimately do? I mean, obviously you were managing a rope at the beginning of the war. How did you end the war, and what did you do in between in terms of jobs?
Well, in between, we started in the slot, which is down around Guadalcanal and Tulagi, and we were 10 months, and in that period of time, we are credited with sinking 1 Japanese light cruiser, 2 destroyers, assisting in 2 others in their sinking, 3 submarines, and about 27 aircraft in the entire war. But we're also credited with the last overt act of the war. We were to take the media out from the beach, Yokosuka, out to the Missouri so they could cover it and then back in. And right after the liberation of Manila, one of the fellows had come back with a little puppy. And he probably had been pretty well abused quite a while before he made friends with us. But anyway, we're sitting there and the media is coming aboard, and the last to come aboard was 3 Japanese newspapermen under guard of the Marines. Up to this point, the puppy had his tongue out, he was happy, his ears were flapping around and tail wagging. And he winds up, he watches the Japanese, his hair stood straight up, his tail went under him, and he was, when the 3rd one stepped off the gangway onto the quarterdeck, he ran over and bit him. And the Saturday Evening Post was there, reporter was on the quarterdeck. He wrote up a big story about it.
Dog bites man.
Yeah.
So, you're how old now?
I'm 87, I'll be 88 in March 1st next year.
What do you want young people or successive generations, the people who are your sons, your daughters, their grandchildren, and the children that they bring into the world, what do you want them to remember about what happened here?
Well, one, of course, don't forget Pearl Harbor. Second, try and study it enough that you can learn from it. If you can't learn from the past, your future is not going to be successful. I lecture to the schools in Seminole County in Florida. Been doing it for about 15 years. And I cover Pearl Harbor, the attack on the Arizona, some of World War II, and a little bit about the Japanese people. So hopefully they'll pass that on down the line.
And what would those lessons be that you're talking about people learning? Because sometimes it seems like it takes quite a few whacks upside the head with a big stick in order to get the message across. What is?
Well, I think first, don't jump to conclusions. Study it first before. And if you're in a position where you would have something to say about whether it was to be another war or not, think it out before you jump to conclusions. And I guess be compassionate. Think peace, not necessarily spreading democracy throughout the world. Just take care of our own country. But That's the thing. They've got to be able to understand what is going on around them and make good conclusions from that. So, hopefully.
Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't mentioned that you think is important to talk about?
No, I don't think so. I did a lot of touring around the world, saw a lot of countries. And any country I visited, I was pretty much happy to get back to the United States. And I think that's something that they should keep in their thoughts. Those of us in World War II and all the wars in between, the current ones that are going on, they're fighting for a freedom. They've got to understand that freedom is not free. And it's a tough situation, but they've got to learn, they've got to be able to study the past, be able to make good decisions as far as the future is concerned.
Okay. And any other advice for young people?
No. I teach in the schools, and hopefully that will be what they pass on.
You're getting started.
I have children, grandchildren. In fact, I have 8 of my family here with me. And I've actually taught some schools, like I was at a high school, taught the classes. Afterwards, I had 2 of the students come up and say, "Hey, Mr. Westbrook, you talked to us in middle school." So hopefully whatever I'm doing will make some sort of an impression and kind of get passed around. Looks like another one going to sea.
Guess that brings back some memories.
Oh, yes. In fact, the USS Pearl Harbor, which operates out of here, I was at her commissioning in 1998. So it was nice to go back aboard and see her again. But I'm old school. There's too much in the new Navy that I don't know anymore.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And if you can just kind of hang there for a second. Your experience here with the reunions, you've been out here several times, I think.
Yeah, this is my 4th.
Yeah. Is it a good thing? You must enjoy it. You keep coming back?
Well, yes, because, well, first off, it gets me a chance to be with those in our organization, the Arizona Reunion Association. I'm an officer now in that outfit. And I really can't explain the feelings that I get when I go aboard the memorial. But basically, the best way is I feel that they know that I'm aboard. And I feel that I know that. So, but it's not a feeling that you can talk about, really.
Yeah.
But,
are you going back?
Oh, yeah. Well, we go over tomorrow.
No, I mean, your final trip to the Arizona, is it going to be permanent?
I'm afraid so. I'm 87. 5 years from now, that makes me 92.
Well, you'll be my dad's age.
Well, but I'm from the East Coast, and that's 13 to 15 hours travel time. The legs and whatnot don't take it so much anymore.
So 5 years from now, if you're able to physically make it, you'll be here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be back.
And a number of survivors are planning on making the Arizona their home.
No, my wife recently died. She was in a nursing home for almost 10 years. And when she died, I had her cremated, and her ashes are interned in Arlington National Cemetery. And I'll join her there.
Okay, great.
Oh.
Thank you. I do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I was born and raised around Red Cloud, Nebraska, which is about mid-state in Nebraska, about 6 miles from the Kansas line. Graduated from high school in Red Cloud there, proceeded to go in the United States Navy. Enlisted in Omaha and went to Great Lakes, Illinois for boot camp. Back home for about a week and back to Great Lakes and across the top of the United States through Montana and to Bremerton, Washington on a train, and caught the USS Arizona at dry dock in Bremerton, Washington. So from there, a lot of dock work there. They were repairing the ship and had a lot of dock workers around, and we scraped and painted the sides in dry dock. And after it went in dry dock, got out of dry dock, went to Long Beach for a couple of days, went from there to Pearl Harbor here, and went out on maneuvers quite often and done some gunnery practice and whatever it takes, and training, and back into Pearl Harbor, back to Long Beach in June of 1942 or 41, and back out to Pearl Harbor, and we're here December the 7th when the Japanese pulled their sneak attack on us. And my battle station was a site setter and the port adding aircraft director, which was one deck above the bridge on the Arizona. And I just finished eating chow and picked up some oranges to take to my buddy down sick bay, and went to my locker for something in the bakery passageway, and then went out on port side on deck and on the forecastle, and some sailors were yelling, pointing toward Fort Island, and so I went to take a look, and I could see the bomb burst over there, and thought I seen the water tower or the dive tower or something go over, and about that time one of the planes banked off to a different direction. I could see the insignia on the wing, and I thought, boy, this is the Japanese. This is more than just a drill, you know. So I started from my battle station. I knew what was going to happen, and I had to go up, you know, a deck to the radio shack, a deck up to the signal bridge, and a deck up to the bridge, and then another deck on up to the platform where I was at. And the director is an all-enclosed unit that turns, and they were setting sights and a pointer was getting on target, and the trainer was getting on target, and I was setting sights. We booked some locks, get some ammunition. We started firing at the planes. Couldn't fire it at the torpedo planes because they come in on the vessel side was tied up alongside of us, and so we concentrated on the high altitude, which we were shooting at about 90 degrees, and we could see our bursts falling way short. And so about that time we got a couple of bombs hit on the aft of the Arizona, and we felt a little vibration from that and whatever. But then we caught the big boy that went down beside the number 2 turret on the bow of the ship, and it got into over 1 million pounds of ammunition, fuel oil, and a couple of 100,000 gallons of aviation gasoline, blowed 110 foot of the bow of the ship when they're off, and cleared back to the base of number 2 turret, and a ball of fire went in the air about probably 500-600 feet, just engulfed the whole superstructure up there where we were at. And of course the admiral and the captain were killed one deck right below. So it took on the port and starboard side. You have to understand that there's a port side, a starboard side, and there's so many men on each side. So we had to, when it was all the smoke, fire kind of died down, the wind blew the smoke away, while there was only about 6 of us left up there. So we got the attention of a sailor on the vessel, and he threw us a heaving line, and we tied on a heavier line. We pulled it across and tied it off on the Arizona, and we proceeded to go hand over the line to the vessel, which was probably about 40 feet in there and about 60 foot across, maybe, or whatever. It was a long ways, but anyway, had a lot of help from the good Lord getting across there, and was on the vessel for a while, and they sent us on a shore boat to the beach. We got on an open air truck, went to U.S. Naval Hospital on the island here, and was there for a number of days, and we're going to send a group back to the United States. So I said, well, I'll go. No, we don't think you can make it right now. We'll send you a later date. I said, no, I want to go now. I'm, ready to go. Well, if you stand up while we change this linen on the bed, why, we'll take you. So I stood up and they changed the linen and I laid back down, and I didn't get up for quite a long time after that. But I was burnt over between 60 and 70% of my body. So they sent us back we got back to States on Christmas Day and went to U.S. Naval Hospital in Vallejo, California. And was there for till about September, I think, of 1942. And then they sent us to Corona for a little while, and they'd taken over a hotel there, and they had these mineral baths, and they had a swimming pool, and they had a few things like that. But they said, well, you're not going to make it really good for a while. You're still not in good shape, so they medically discharged me. So I went back to Nebraska and was around there for about a year or so, and still not much going on back there, and still just getting out of the 30s, and we weren't making much money, and all my friends and buddies were all in the service, so I re-enlisted and went back into the Navy. Had to go through the draft board, but I had a couple of friends on the draft board, and they got me in there, and got to Omaha and got the permission from the Navy to go back in. They said, good news and bad news. You can go back in the Navy, but you got to go through boot camp again. So I went through boot camp. I said, oh man. So I went through boot camp again. They wanted me to stay there and push I was a recruit CPO there, and they wanted me to push some more boots through camp there, and I said, no, I want to go to sea. So they sent me to Treasure Island. I caught a destroyer, the DD-406, USS Stack. And we went to the South Pacific, where I participated in about, I guess, probably 6 invasions, including 2 or 3 in New Guinea and both invasions of the Philippines and Okinawa. And about that time, they sent me back to school in electrical hydraulic school in San Diego. And I went home on leave for 30 days, come back, the war was over. Being an old salt and been in the service before, I wanted out. I said, I got enough points to get out. They said, no, you got to finish the school. So I finished the school, and they sent me to St. Louis, Missouri, and they discharged me December the 4th, 1945, for the second time. That's my story outside of I want to keep this in front of the American public, and I want them to not forget about our flag and what it stands for, and I want for people to say a prayer for our troops that's doing such a hell of a job for us right now.
Morning of December 7th, 41, I was on board the USS Arizona. I was stationed in my gun station, and workstation was turret 3. At the time the bombs started falling, I was in the lower handling room. The chief turret captain come in and told us the Japs are bombing. We started for our battle stations. Up through the turret, I was on the shell deck, which is about halfway up when it blew up, and knocked shells loose, knocked lights out. I went on up through the turret, and when it was safe to do so, went out the overhang and down on the starboard quarter deck and put life rafts off the turret in the water, took burned people off and put them in their life rafts, and by that time some boats are running, put them in the boats. Senior officer on board was Lieutenant Commander Sam Fuqua. When he gave the order to abandon ship, I could step off of the starboard quarter deck into a motor launch. It had sank about 12 or 15 feet, but it was going down mostly level, and being busy, we didn't notice. We went to Fort Island. Women raided officers' barracks, airmen's barracks, and got clothes for us. And we spent the night in the barracks on Fort Island. Next day, I volunteered to go on a destroyer, and I was on 4 different ones during the war.
And tell me how you survived that day.
How I survived, I was in the turret, and most of the people that we took off were burned real bad. Some of them, the uniform of the day was shorts and t-shirts, and they had no protection against flash burns. Some of them I took off, the skin on their hands, arms would be peeling off, and the other parts of them would be already burned crisp. And one or two of them could call me by name, and I couldn't even recognize them. They were burned so bad. But being in the turret, I didn't get burned or hurt. Oh.
Tell me about the gambling thing.
Well, I had won about $60 in the crap game the night before, and I was going to take one of my friends to Honolulu on Liberty. And when the bombs started dropping, I grabbed my wallet and saved my $60.
I was a radioman third class on the V Division, the USS Arizona. I came aboard the Arizona in the fall of 1940, and I came out the Pearl in January 40. Went back for 2 weeks in June of 40, and back out the Pearl. Worked in and out. I made third class radioman in August. I started flying as a crewman in one of the Kingfisher aircraft, number 3 actually. I got to fly with those young ensigns, and it was really a fine deal. I love to fly with those young guys. Well, a little bit later, the senior aviator told me I was flying with him from now on. He was a good man, but he was a perfectionist, and he was a Lieutenant JG Academy man. It wasn't like flying with those ensigns. I had to be a little bit more careful. I had to be a little better, but I satisfied him, so I was his crewman. And I was 1 week before the attack here. We were out to sea. Japanese submarines were chasing us out to sea, followed us all the time we were out there. We knew they were out there, but whenever we would illuminate them at night with the searchlights, they would submerge. In the daytime, we would send them messages on the international frequencies to identify themselves. They wouldn't answer, but we knew they were there. And then on the 5th of December, we came into Pearl. And normally, when our force would come in, the other force would go out. That morning, I noted the other battle forces wasn't coming out, and I asked Lieutenant J.G. Minnie, the pilot, why would the other force not come out? He said, well, with these submarines out here, the powers that be figured it'd be better to keep these slow battleships inside where we got the torpedo nets or submarine nets across the harbor, and they'd be safe in here. And he says, the way things are right now, if we go to war, we will expect possibly some night shelling by submarines here, and that's about all. Well, it satisfied me. And we put our airplanes over on Ford Island and went over and back on board the ship. And we had the vessel repair ship alongside of us because he was going to repair our evaporators and a few other things, because we were going to head back to States on the 13th. Well, that was on Friday, I want to tell about. Well, Saturday, we went on Liberty and went and bought some Christmas cards and whatnot over Honolulu, and came back aboard. And I remember we were a little late getting back aboard that night, and but they came down. We got aboard without them getting our names, but they came down and got the billet numbers of the bunks that were empty. And the bunks that were empty, we were already in our bunks. The bunks that were empty belonged to some other guys who were AWOL, but they'd have been in trouble the next day if the Japs hadn't hit us, but that's another story. Anyway, that morning, we got up regular time, had our breakfast, and we talked about going down in the aviation storeroom down below decks to address our Christmas cards. I said, well, I'm going to go get a bath first. So I picked up my towel, my toilet articles, and we heard some explosions. Went over and listened, and some guy, I said, that sounds like on Fort Island. They said, yeah, there's a lot of construction. I said, no, they're not construction because they don't work on Sunday. And I thought maybe somebody had driven a tractor into some of the bombs they had stored over there, and maybe messed our airplanes up. Let's go up and look. So we went up with the forecastle, three of us, Don Cousy, Dick Gill, and me, and went up on the forecastle, and they saw a big fire over in Fort Island. And we over where our planes are. But then I turned and looked up the harbor. I saw a plane flying down the harbor toward the battleships. And I thought, well, the Army is playing games again. And then I saw that same thing had a torpedo on it. I said, that plane's got a fish on it. The Army got no torpedo planes. And then it dropped the torpedo, and the torpedo went and hit the Oklahoma, 2 ships ahead of us. And then that aircraft winged over, and I saw the big meatball, and I said, good God, they're Japs. And then he came down, he strafed right across, missed us by about 20 feet or less. So he strafed across there, and we ducked down, and I stood up, and I yelled up at the bridge. The kids up on the bridge, the OD must have been down having breakfast or something. There's some sailors up there. They were watching the air show over Fort Island. And I yelled up, wake up there and sound air raid that the Japs are hitting us. So they started scurrying around up there. I went down below decks then to warn my people that we're being hit by the Japs, and they wouldn't believe me. And so I went after the aviation workshop where some of our rated people that could sleep in there, and they wouldn't have to get up early Sunday morning. I woke those guys up. They gave me a little static about my April Fool jokes, and then the air raid sounded, and they said, all engaged personnel, go to the 3rd deck. Well, I didn't have an air raid station, so me and Cousy and Gill headed for the 3rd deck. And then just as they went down the ladder ahead of me, I just started down the ladder, and General Quarters sounded, and I yelled down to him, come back up here, we got a GQ station, let's go to it. So I turn around and go to my General Quarters station. Right at the top of the ladder, I run into a Marine lieutenant. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to my battle station. He said, get back down there. We will have no panic on this ship. I said, I'm not panicking, mister. I'm going to my battle station. I elbowed him out of the way and went to my battle station. I don't know what happened to Cousy and Gill. They were ahead of me going down the ladder, and he may have stopped them. He may have closed the hatch. I don't know, because I went onto my battle station, and they never showed up, and they're still aboard. But just about that time, we got hit by the first bomb, hit aft and bounced off the turret 4 down through through the deck into officers' country, exploded down there. A big fire blowing out of there like a blowtorch. Well, I went back there. That was my battle station, was para station. Went back there, and 4 other guys from my division had gone back there too. And we got back there. It's kind of odd. I see an officer's hat laying on the floor, or on the deck there. And it didn't sound like anything. And then I heard this guy coughing, and a lot of smoke down in this ladder down there. And I told this Don Graham, first class aviation mech, I said, there's somebody down there. And I thought it might be one of these young ensigns that was still aboard. See, our other pilots were ashore with their wives, but it's one young ensign, real good guy. I said, that might be, well, his name was Williams. I call him Willie. That might be Willie. Let's go down and see if we can get him. He said, I'm not going down there. I said, well, I'm going to go down and see. So I went down that smoky place, felt him with my foot, and down there. And then I came back up and got another couple breaths of air, and told this first class, you come halfway down there and I'll hang on to your foot. I held on to his old skinny old leg and went down there, got a hold of the guy's shirt collar, and tried to pull him up the ladder. I couldn't lift him, but I said, I yelled at him, crawl up the ladder. And he said, he didn't say anything. He said, puking like, or coughing. I pulled one more time, and I needed another breath of air, and I said, I used some words that you don't normally use to officers. Crawl up the ladder, you SOB. I didn't use that short, or die down here. Then he started crawling up the ladder, and I was lifting, helping him, see. It was pretty heavy. I got my head up above, got another breath or two of air, over the edge of the combing, and then kept pulling him up. And me and this first class dragged him up, laid him over against a turret, and he puked his breakfast up. Well, he laid there, and we went ahead, had this fire hose, trying to get air, water on it. Couldn't get any water, and then shortly this guy got up. He put his hat on, pulled it down over, almost over his ears, came to me and he says, "What are you men doing?" I said, "We're manning this fire hose." And he said this, "Man that fire hose, that's an order." And then he disappeared. I thought, what a stupid order that was. And I realized he was addled. And he, later on, when I wrote up my statements, they didn't dovetail with his, because he never said that he was knocked down that ladder and he was rescued. He probably didn't even know about it, but he said that the bomb hit and he was knocked unconscious, and when he came to, he took over as a senior officer and handled the battle. See, well, I know that he disappeared after he told me to man the fire hose, and well, we tried to get the water on fire. We got hit several more times, and I remember looking up, got knocked down. I looked up and I saw these airplanes way up high dropping bombs, and the level bombers, and it looked like raindrops coming out of them. But I didn't think they were going to hit us because they didn't look like they were going to come to us. The trajectory was wrong, but they kept getting bigger. And I got up on my feet again, got my fire hose, and one of them hit us up forward or two, and went down and exploded the magazines, and all hell broke loose. The ship exploded and almost jumped out of the water forward, big fireball and smoke and what came back to me. I remember dropping my fire hose, throwing my arms over my face, trying to turn around, and then the big fireball hit, and I thought I was dying. But then I didn't remember anything else, and until I'm in the water, underwater, trying to get to the surface. And I got to the surface, and I looked back aboard the ship. I could see nobody alive, none. I saw body parts on the lifeline and stuff like that, but no, not a live person. I can't go back there. So I thought a lot of guys were in the water, and no life jackets or nothing. And I decided we would maybe swim to Ford Island, but that looked like a long ways away, but the Nevada was behind us. So I decided to swim back to Nevada, and I swam back and eventually got aboard the Nevada. Climbed up the gangway and got aboard, and when the second casemate on the starboard side, they wouldn't let me in the first casemate because I was filthy and they live in there. They said they were just getting underway. And I ducked down and got in the second casemate that let me in. And they said, they called down the sick bay and they said, "We got a mess attendant here off the Arizona and he's hurt. Should we bring you down to sick bay or will you send a corpsman up?" And I said, I'm not a mess attendant, I'm not hurt. Well, the black guys, all they could do was be mess attendants. They couldn't have regular rates. And I said, "I'm not a mess attendant." And they took me over a mirror. I looked at it. My hair was singed off, it was woolly, and every part of my body was black with that black bunker oil. And I could see why they figured I was a mess attendant. They gave me a bucket and some saltwater soap. I started to wash my face, I washed my head, and I washed everything I could, and then I started to wash my arms, and the skin started coming off like a bad sunburn, so I just patted them back, the oil back on them, and didn't wash them. And then I helped them with their gun, and they were getting underway there, helped them by their gun. Went on past the Arizona with a burner, and went down, and we got hit. And the irony of this, one of the bombs that came down and hit the Nevada, the second wave, it went right down through that casemate that would not let me in. And if I'd have been that casemate, I'd have been history. But I was not in there, and it bomb made a big old crater right in that casemate, and everybody in there was killed. But I just lucked out. It happened that way. Anyway, I helped fight fires, take care of the wounded, and I was wounded myself, but I worked until I was so tired I couldn't go anymore. I went over in the corner of the blacksmith shop, laid down, went to sleep, and they were pushing her to keep her from sinking in the channel. They were pushing the Nevada over by the beach so she would not block the channel when she went down. She was sinking. And I remember that the two corpsmen came, shook me, and asked me, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Leave me alone, let me sleep, I'll be all right." They said, one guy said, "Oh, he's hurt, he's bleeding." And the other guy said, he started to move me. And I really hurt then, and I yelled at him, "Leave me alone, don't you touch me again, you're hurting me." And he said, "Have you had morphine?" I said, "No." They took a syringe of morphine, shoved it in my arm. And in a few minutes, I feel like a big, nice warm blanket was over me, and I could have gone to sleep, see? And then I didn't hurt. And they put me in a stretcher, took me to down the gangway and onto a motor launch and hauled me down along all the burning battleships all down there to get me into hospital ship Solus. And they took me to hospital ship Solus. I know they stripped me of all my clothes and stuck some kimono or pajamas or something on me and put me to bed. And I remember that night our planes were coming in from the Enterprise, and the gunners in the harbor thought they were enemy, and they opened up on them. And the nurse came by me and she says, with a life jacket, she said, "Are you able to get this on?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Those devils are at us again." And well, I just laid it across my chest. I wasn't about to put it on. This first class took me around to another ward, got me some clean pajamas, and I got in bed. And then they started, the next day or two, they found pus and blood in my urine, and they also picked shrapnel out of me and treated my burns. And well, I was there 13 days, and then they let me go back to duty. The funny part, they let me go back to duty. I went to get some clothes, and they gave me 2 suits of underwear, 1 pair of white pants, and 2 pair of socks, and no shoes, and no hat. I said, "I can't go back to duty. You got any shoes?" They said, "Well, the only thing we got in the small store for shoes are size 7s and 14s. Well, I was a size 9 or 10, and I got some shoes. So they said, "Well, there's a pile of shoes over there." A bunch of shoes they took off, and the guys were all oil soaked. I went over and sorted through, and I found a pair that would fit me. Might have been my own, I don't know. But anyway, I got a pair of shoes that would fit me, oily shoes, put them on, went back to duty. I went over to the receiving station. I run into this Lieutenant Commander Fuqua, who we saved out of the hole. And he said to me, he says, "We heard you were wounded." I said, "Well, I had a bandage on my arm here where I was cut, and my arms were kind of blistered, and I said, "Well, I got some cuts here on the arm, and my lips were still forming like that." And I talked to him. I said, my ears were still cauliflowered, and I said, "And if you want me to, I'll go and pull my drawers down and show you some more holes in my rear end." "Oh, no, that's all right." And he says, "Are you able to work?" And I said, "I'm not going to work around here." And I said, "I belong to Aviation Division. I'm not going to work over here." And he said, No. He says, "You go over to Ford Island and report to Lieutenant Minnie." Lieutenant Minnie, he was lieutenant now, because he made, at the second day of the war, they made a lieutenant out of a JG, see? So I went over there. I rode the ferry over, and I couldn't get a ride, so I walked down to the hangar, and somebody saw me coming, and they went ahead and told him. Well, he come running out there, and he didn't believe it that I was able to walk. And then we talked a little bit, and he said, "Well, you look pretty good shape." He says, "When do you think you'll be able to fly?" I said, "Tomorrow." And he said, "Oh, no, not tomorrow." He said, "Maybe next week or so." But anyway, I got checked in, and they gave me a bunk down in the hangar, a cot, and no sheets, no blankets, just some target sleeves to cover up with. And I didn't have a hat. And a guy off the Arizona who had been on the beach, and he lived through it because he was on the beach, he was AWOL. He was second class, and he said, "Is that all the clothes you got?" I said, "Yeah." And so we walked out through the hangar, and here's a brand new hat laying on a float of an airplane. He said, "Here, try this on." I put it on, it fit. And I said, "But that ain't mine." He said, "Sure as hell is, it's yours." And so it didn't have a name in it, so it was my hat. and it fit. It was a brand new Bob Evans, a real good hat. Anyway, I had a hat then. And, well, I put up with this, that's about the end of the Pearl Harbor deal. I went back to flying in a few days and went on. And during the war, I was flying in scouts and dive bombers, torpedo planes, all through the rest of the war. If we would have had 1 hour's notice, 1 hour warning, we'd have had every gunman and every airplane that could have gotten in the air, we'd have had in the air. And we'd have given those guys one heck of a good reception. But we didn't have that hour. But America has got to stay alert. They've got to stay ready. Regardless of anything happens in this world, we've got to be ready and able to handle it. And that's all I can say. If we don't stay alert, stay ready, we're going to be in the same boat we were, and we'll lose.
Well, the interment ceremonies that take place is unique. It doesn't really happen anywhere in the United States but here. And why is it so unique? It's because one of those that survive that day, when they pass away, generally before they pass away, they make it known that they'd like to have their ashes, that's the only way we do this, is their ashes returned to the ship. So we do a walkthrough and practice, and we get it right so that there's no hiccups. And we have a chaplain, and then we also have some family members that may want to say something. One representative of the family will say something. The superintendent, Jacqueline Ashwell, she will probably have some words to say. The senior officer from the Navy who will be here, or the Marine Corps, they will have something to say. We take the family members into the memorial room and they unveil, because it's in black, kind of cloth over the name that's been etched. They go in the room, and then we used to have a black cloth, but we thought about that and we decided we're going to have an American flag. And the family member, one on each side, pull the flag away and they see the name. And when they do that, you don't know what kind of emotion is going to come out.